Today's video is brought to you by AlmostHeaven.com. Handcrafting at-home saunas since 1977. Want better sleep, less stress, and faster recovery? Now's the perfect time. Shop saunas, cold plunges, hybrids, and accessories. Use our exclusive code at checkout to save 5%. Link below.
Back alongside Bo Parrish, I'm Dave Erickson. Our topic today is justice, and I think people can look at justice and confuse it with getting revenge for being wronged in some cases, but I think we have a positive angle on what justice can be and how we can take a different stance and perspective on this word. Bo?
Well, Dave, first of all, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And even though our coasts separate us geographically, that is not enough to keep us apart from a technological capacity. And so loving this time to be able to connect with you. And just on this whole idea of justice, I think it's rooted in an inaccurate view of self. In other words, we're a society that places an overemphasis on individualism, on me, myself, and I. Self-preservation is at such a premium that we are almost willing to do whatever it takes, including stepping on those around us. And unfortunately, it oftentimes becomes our family and our friends in order to get what it is we want. So anyone who interferes with that plan, anyone who we perceive that may have caused us wrong, what's our first reaction? You're going to pay. I'm going to get you for that. How dare you step in my way on my pursuit of self-betterment? Not only am I trying to preserve where I've come, but I also have laser focus on what's ahead for me and me alone. And that is no way to live our lives, because you think about the opposite of revenge it's reconciliation. In order to maintain and strengthen a relationship, you can't just think about yourself. We can't be the focal point 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. At some point, we have to swallow a bit of our pride, because essentially that's what it is. It's an inaccurate view because it's an elevated view. We tend to see ourselves better than we actually are. You know, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying that we tend to judge others by their actions, where we judge ourselves by our intentions. We judge others by their actions, in other words, what we can literally see them doing. And we judge ourselves according to what we intended to do, whether or not we actually did what we set out to do. And so whenever someone causes us harm or what we perceive to be as a wrong, rather than immediately seeking revenge, and whether it be someone cutting us off in traffic, that initial urge to flip them the bird, could we stop for a moment and put ourselves in their situation and say, gosh, maybe that person is late for the presentation of their career. And if they do not get there on time, now, it's not to say that it's right, but it's certainly thinking from their perspective rather than, you just cut me off. How dare you? I'm going to flip you the bird at the very least. And if I can catch you at the next traffic light, I'm going to cuss you out. Because again, all of that motivation is built on me being the focal point. Whereas reconciliation simply stops, takes a deep breath, because it's not fun to get cut off in traffic. You know, I'm not justifying that in any means, but it's stopping for a second. And rather than immediately thinking about the wrong that was done to you, putting yourselves in their situation. You know, it could be a heated argument that they just left at the house. It could be a number of reasons, but it's not about me in the moment, because me in the moment is going to translate to retaliation right off the bat. Because when I'm backed into a corner, in a proverbial sense, I'm going to retaliate. And retaliation is rooted in that need to get even and even to one up, which are all side effects of revenge. Revenge is absolutely catastrophic to relationship building and relationship enhancement. It has no place in a relationship, whereas reconciliation, it gives the other person the benefit of the doubt, because a conflict is essentially a difference of opinion. No matter how elaborate or no matter what the cause was, a conflict is a difference in opinion. And when a difference occurs, rather than immediately putting up your guard or pulling out your sword, what would it look like to take a step back and think for a moment from the other person's perspective?
I've heard this, and when it comes to relationships, is that you address the problem, you don't address the person, getting away from making it personal. And it sounds like, let's say you are in traffic and someone cuts you off, it really isn't about you. And it rings true to me that there is a life outside of you and those four wheels inside that car, and you have no idea. And who are you to pass judgment on that person's actions? As you just said, we're judging actions when we want to be judged on intent. We need to turn that around. I want to point out something that you wrote on your blog is retire from retaliation. You recall that blog post you wrote?
Yes, and that was essentially my way of appealing to, well, it's in a sense an acronym that I like to use, or I try to create notoriety in simple yet concise statements that people find easy to remember just because it flows well. So thinking about the concept of retaliation, what could I write that would resonate in someone's mind? And so putting two words that begin with the same letter tend to make it easier for people to remember. And so retire from retaliation, in which I titled that post, what actually came from an inspiration to a sermon that I'd listened to earlier that week, where it essentially was talking about the problem with revenge, which you and I are discussing here. And it's ironic because although we're supposed to be talking about justice, which is where we are at this point in our series, justice at the root of every conflict is eventually going to be served. It's whether or not we are willing to give it time to be carried out by a party other than ourselves. Because in the moment of the conflict, we have two choices. We can retaliate and act as if we are the judge, that if we let them go, they're going to get away with it. God forbid that should happen. So our first choice is to retaliate. Our second choice is to reconcile. And reconcile seeks first to listen and to understand, whereas retaliation seeks first to speak and to be understood. So speaking and being understood are products of self-preservation, whereas listening and seeking to understand are products of reconciliation. And when we become known as reconcilers as opposed to revengers, I know I kind of made up a word there, but I think the point is taken, is that it's going to give us a more stable outlook on life, and it's going to put us in a better position to strengthen and maintain our relationships. And it's ultimately going to be a magnet. Or think about those people in your life right now that you enjoy most, that you can literally spend 5 hours with them as if it was 15 minutes. They're just easy to be around. They go with the flow. They take things for what they're worth. They don't react. They do not allow situations to elevate. And it's because the thoughts of that person, they're on you. They're actually more interested in your well-being in that moment than they are their own. And I'm not saying we are human beings, we're all prone to weaknesses, but those who are reconcilers by nature are at peace with themselves. So they have the ability to create peace and to free their mind from distraction and truly listen to you as you speak. It's kind of, I just remember our conversation last week on influence. The best way to influence people is to listen to what it is that they have to tell you. Because inside of us, Dave, is a story. We all have a story, and our stories are dying to come out. We are just looking for the proper environment in which there's trust built, again, another byproduct of influence, and comfort based on the abilities person not to judge us for what we're sharing, but to actually relate. And the way that we do that is we empathize. We cannot empathize if we do not listen. It's no accident that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And the adage always goes, the key to relationships is to listen twice as much as you speak. Well, if you think about that at its core, the more we listen, the more ability we have to reconcile any differences that may arise in the future, because we're all imperfect. We're all prone to fly off the handle every now and then. But if we built up that reputation amongst our friends and families as being quick to listen rather than retaliate, then ultimately it's going to put us in the driver's seat as far as positive influence, as far as reconciliation, and as far as a strong relationship builder, not destroyer. Because on the flip side, if you think about those, and we can all think very quickly, that are hot-headed, fly off the handle more often than not, temper tantrum throwing type people, no one wants to be around those types of people, because we know how they're going to respond if and when conflict arises. So it's a matter of your perspective in that moment and what you value most. Do you value being right, or do you value being in relationship? No man or woman was created as an island. We are social beings by nature, and it's in our best interest to seek reconciliation above revenge in order to sustain long-lasting, productive relationships.
So if a person is guilty of taking the wrong mindset of seeking justice in a retaliation form, what are those? What can someone reflect on themselves and say, "Yep, that's me. I am guilty of that." I know you've said some of these things. I was wondering if there's a different way a person could identify if they're on the wrong path to justice.
Sure, absolutely. And I am an authority on this matter because I am very quick to speak more often than I would like to admit. I do suffer from what's called foot in mouth disease. Fortunately, I'm also just as eager and fast to use the 2 most powerful words in my vocabulary, which is I'm sorry. But signs of that retaliation boiling or harboring or getting ready to come out, or in the moment where you can sense that you feel wrong or that you feel you have been accused or forced into a corner that you do not feel you should be in that moment, if you can flip the switch in the back of your mind that goes from me to you, I promise you it will dissolve the bitterness that's building in your mind, because then all of a sudden you take yourself out of focus and you put the other person where it becomes a matter of understanding. And often when I start to get in that situation, I'll just say to my wife, Marietta, let me understand what I hear you saying. Is this the problem that you see? And whether it's an argument, whether it's a disagreement, whatever caused it, doesn't matter. It's where we are in this moment. And the best way to proceed is, again, to seek to understand rather than trying to force my point down her throat, because the conflict is cooking. It's already coming. And so rather than seeing it out to the end It's trying to catch it by asking the question, is this what I hear you saying? And give her the chance to say, yes, it is. And if she says, yes, it is, and say, forgive me, let me step back before it leads into an argument, before I say something that I'm going to regret. Because revenge in the moment, 9 times out of 10, is going to lead to regret. No one likes to live in regret.
So it sounds like you're trying to take emotion out of this reaction when it comes to these personal relationships. How can you take that mindset, or give me examples of taking away from a husband-wife or a couple of friends relationship into the professional world or the office or business situation? How do you do the same kind of thing where you go, give me an example. Okay, this can't be emotional. Let's again address the problem, get away from an attack. This is not an attack on me. You know what I'm saying?
Unfortunately, in the business environment, a lot of these conflicts are based on political affairs, political matters, structures in the organization. I get ahead by making you less, by stepping on you, doing what I have to do in order to get the job done. And unfortunately, most organizations are dictated by politics. So without having an understanding how things work, it's believing the best about everyone in the organization until they give you a reason to believe otherwise. So rather than operating by our justice system in America, is that you are truly innocent until proven guilty. And Dave, actually, me personally, I still err on the side of naivety, even after being wronged from a business standpoint, because I still want to believe the best about people, even when it's been to my detriment or it's been to my demise. Because ultimately, every organization without people is not going to work, and understanding the dynamics of people. And that's why you've heard me say I'm a student of people. And so, yes, we're talking about a business environment, but the same principles apply to an intimate relationship with husband or a wife, or even with your friends. Is that your primary mission in every relationship is to gather as much data, and let's just use the word data because that's appropriate for a business setting, on what that person values most, that you are in a position to carry a conversation that begins with hello. For example, you find out what they like to do outside of the office, and you give them an opportunity to tell you about that. In the first conversation, you're probably going to hear things like how they met their wife, what the names of their children are, if they like to play golf, if they like to hunt and fish. You're filing that away in the back of your mind. This could be your coworker, because everybody in an organization has a day number one where they're the new guy, where they're the new girl. And the best way to integrate into a new structure is to try to get to know as many people as you possibly can in the most efficient and effective manner. Because all of a sudden, if you become the one who is known as the expert, and an expert is just simply, gosh, I can't believe you remember all those things about what I shared with you. You remember my anniversary, you remember my children's names, you remember that I like to duck hunt. Well, it's not that you're some brain surgeon, it's just you took time to ask them. And then when people feel comfortable with you, it's going to be a natural extension of that first relationship to introduce you around. And so multiplicity takes over because you've gone out of your way. And the first one's the most important one, because you have to integrate rather than stay inside your shell and just hope someone comes and takes you under their wing and introduces you around. If you can prove to that first person that you are sincerely interested in them, and again, we're talking about relationship building 101. The stronger the relationship, the less likely retaliation, not if, but when conflict occurs, is going to be the result. Because when we're skeptical of people because we do not know them, our natural response is going to be to react, to seek revenge. If they act first, we're going to get them back. We're going to retaliate. And ultimately, that is going to wreak havoc on relationships going forward. The same principles apply, just to a different level of engagement on the way that we love our spouse, the way that we love our friends. And love is the connection, the shared emotion that exists when you can demonstrate an intimate knowledge of the other person. It can apply just as easily to your office manager, to your boss, to your coworkers, to those who report directly to you. There is no hierarchy when it comes to relationships. And that is a direct result of not an elevated view of self, but a right view of self. Because right view of self lends itself to reconciliation, which restores relationships.
Bo, this topic on justice really opened my mind and there is a clear difference, and I can see that as you were talking about the difference of being in an office environment, professional setting versus being in relationships, or even being in that car, where I can see why someone would react with a negative emotion, because there is no connection between you and that driver who cut you off. But if you're in an office setting, you've developed that relationship, therefore you're less likely to want to retaliate and want to reconciliate. Same thing goes with a spouse or a close friend. So this is you said it very, very nicely.
Dave, that's a great point. I didn't even consider that, because if we were in traffic and you and I, as close of friends as we are, if I could see it with you that actually cut me off in traffic, I guarantee my first response would not be, "You sucker, I'm going to get you back." And be like, "Wow, Dave is not having a good day," because of the relationship that exists. So it's impossible to have a relationship with everyone on the road. So it's a little bit harder. And I think that's why emotions just run rampant in traffic, is because you got a bunch of perfect strangers all competing for that precious space of getting to work or getting to wherever it is they're going on time. But if the relationship is there with the person who is holding a clock, watching for when you enter the office, it's just a matter of explaining the situation. We were in bumper to bumper traffic. I had a blow up argument at the house, and they understand because you've taken that time to invest in them and you've sought their relationship as a priority. Relationship, ultimately, at the end of the day, is what we all crave as human beings. It's just a matter of how much we're willing to pay or to invest on the front end that's going to cause us to want to seek first to reconcile rather than to retaliate. Hence the term retire from retaliation.
Bo Parrish, great topic, very informative, and nicely done. That was justice today. Thank you, Bo.
Looking for a great at-home sauna at a great price? Get 5% off any indoor or outdoor sauna, cold plunge, or infrared sauna from Almost Heaven with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at checkout. For over 40 years, Almost Heaven saunas have been trusted as the top American home sauna manufacturer. Almost Heaven saunas deliver high-quality products and firmly stands behind the holistic benefits the sauna brings to your mind and your body. Again, get 5% off any order with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at almostheaven.com. There's also a direct link below this video.